The grand halls of the Zalari Empire stretched like endless rivers of silver and glass. High ceilings glowed with soft blue light, casting long shadows that seemed alive. Marble floors reflected every step like water disturbed by ripples. To outsiders, the palace of the Zalari was breathtaking. To those who lived there, it was cold, perfect, and mercilessly silent. Captain Marcus Hale walked through those halls with steady steps, though his stomach twisted inside him. He was the only human in sight. Guards in black armor lined the walls, their eyes hidden behind polished visors. Every pair of eyes, Zalari nobles, scribes, and courtiers, followed him as if he were a wild animal that had wandered into a temple. He had been briefed on the Empire before coming. They are proud, disciplined, unbending. Their society runs like a machine. No emotion, no weakness, no warmth. At least, that was what the Federation scholars had told him. But now, standing here, he felt the weight of those warnings. Marcus adjusted the collar of his dark blue uniform and kept walking, pretending the silence didn't crush him. He had faced pirate raids, war zones, and even the vacuum of space, but nothing felt as suffocating as this walk through the palace. Finally, the double doors of the throne chamber opened. A wave of cool air brushed against him, carrying the scent of metal and flowers, an odd combination. The room was massive, built to remind visitors of their insignificance. Silver pillars rose like trees, and in the center, on a raised platform, sat the throne of the Zalari, and upon it, the princess herself, Princess Leora of the Zalari Empire. Marcus had heard rumors, whispers carried by traders, smugglers, and diplomats. She is untouchable. Her beauty is a weapon. Her gaze alone makes generals bow. No one dares to look too long. No one dares to speak without permission. But rumors never match the truth. She was radiant in a way Marcus could not describe. Her skin shimmered faintly, almost like moonlight on a calm sea. Her silver hair flowed like silk, braided with crystal threads that glimmered with each movement. Her eyes, sharp, violet, and unblinking, rested on him with the weight of 1,000 expectations. Around her, dozens of nobles stood in strict rows, their robes heavy with gems and metals. The silence was unbearable. A voice announced, cold, and echoing, Captain Marcus Hale of the Terran Federation, envoy of Earth. Marcus bowed slightly, his heart hammering in his chest. He knew the protocol demanded precision, stillness, control, yet his human instincts, messy, impulsive, full of raw honesty, were harder to silence. The princess tilted her head ever so slightly, studying him like one might study a strange artifact. "You are far from your world, human," she said, her voice clear and commanding, yet strangely soft at the edges. "Yes, Your Highness," Marcus replied, keeping his tone respectful but not meek. "I come in peace carrying the greetings of my people." The words echoed across the chamber, but the silence afterward was heavier than before. Every Zalari noble watched him, searching for the slightest mistake. And then, without thinking, Marcus said it. The thought had formed the moment he laid eyes on her. It was not planned. It was not part of the carefully written script his advisors had drilled into him. It was pure human instinct, reckless and sincere. "You're beautiful." The chamber froze. The nobles gasped as if he had spat poison. A few staggered back in shock. Guards shifted, hands moving toward their weapons. The silence became electric, sharp enough to cut through steel. Princess Leora's violet eyes widened. For the first time, her composure cracked. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Her hands trembled slightly on the arms of her throne, and then she collapsed. Gasps turned into cries. Nobles rushed forward, horrified. Guards drew their weapons, pointing them at Marcus. The great court of the Zalari had become chaos in seconds. Marcus stood frozen. His mind screamed at him to explain, to defend himself, but his tongue refused to move. All he had done was speak the truth, something so natural, so harmless to humans. But here, it was as if he had shattered a sacred law. Two guards grabbed his arms roughly, pulling him down to his knees. A voice shouted, You dare insult the princess? You dare defile her with human weakness? Marcus clenched his jaw but said nothing. He looked past the guards toward Leora. She was being lifted by her handmaidens, her eyes fluttering open. For just a second before she was carried away, her gaze locked onto Marcus's, and he saw something there. Not anger, not hatred, confusion, curiosity, and beneath it all, something that looked dangerously close to longing. The chamber emptied in chaos. Marcus was dragged into a side hall, shoved against a wall, and surrounded by armored guards. The nobles shouted for his execution. Others demanded he be imprisoned. Words like insult, blasphemy, and treason echoed in the corridors. Marcus's heart pounded, but he forced himself to breathe slowly. He wasn't a soldier now. He was a representative of Earth. If he lost his temper, if he acted like the wild human they expected, his mission would be doomed. Still, what had he done wrong? All he had said was the truth. Hours passed. He was kept under guard in a waiting chamber of stone and steel, the air cold and heavy. No food, no water, only silence. Finally, the doors opened. An older Zalari noble entered, his robe dragging across the floor. His eyes were like frozen glass. "You are reckless, human," the noble said. "Do you even understand what you have done?" Marcus met his gaze. "I spoke honestly." Honesty, the noble spat the word, like it was filth. "Among us, emotion is corruption. Compliments are chains. To call the princess yet that word is to destroy her dignity." Marcus frowned. "On earth we call beauty a truth. We see it as respect, not shame." The noble shook his head slowly. "Perhaps on your crude world, but here such words are forbidden. Do you wish to be executed for a single foolish sentence?" Marcus didn't flinch. "If telling the truth is a crime here, then maybe I'm guilty." The noble studied him for a long time, then turned and left without another word. Marcus was left in silence again. He didn't know if he would live to see another sunrise, or if the Empire would decide that his words had sparked an unforgivable war. But in his heart, he held on to one memory: the look in Princess Leora's eyes when she fell. It was not hatred. It was not fury. It was something else. Something that told Marcus his words had broken more than a law. They had broken through a wall. The palace never slept after that day. Rumors spread like fire in dry grass. Every corridor, every balcony, every shadowed chamber of the Zalari Empire buzzed with whispers of the human who had dared to speak the forbidden word. Servants whispered it in fear. Nobles repeated it in disgust. Guards cursed it under their breath. Beautiful. A word so simple. A word so harmless to a human. But to the Zalari, it was a spark that could burn an empire. Marcus Hale sat in a cold chamber of stone and silver. The walls glowed faintly with the blue light of crystals, yet the room felt like a cell. Guards stood outside, silent and unblinking. He had been here since the moment the princess collapsed, waiting for judgment. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. He had replayed the scene 100 times in his head. Her eyes, her silence, the way her body gave in as if the word itself had struck her. Marcus clenched his fists. He wasn't a fool. He understood that cultures were different. He had been trained to respect foreign traditions, but he had not meant harm. He had spoken truth. On earth, calling someone beautiful was kindness, respect, admiration. Why would anyone collapse from hearing it? The door opened with a hiss. A guard stepped in, stiff as steel. "The princess demands your presence," Marcus blinked. "The princess? Now?" "Yes. You will follow. Speak nothing unless spoken to. Do not meet her eyes too long. Do not raise your voice. Do not—" "I get it," Marcus interrupted softly. "You're afraid I'll break more of your rules." The guard glared but said nothing more. He motioned for Marcus to follow. The walk was quiet. The halls were nearly empty now, but he could feel the stares from those who passed. Zalari nobles watched from a distance, their expressions like stone masks. Some looked at him with open hatred, others with cold curiosity. Finally, they reached a tall set of doors carved with silver vines. The guard tapped his staff once, and the doors slid open. Inside was no throne room, no court chamber. This was softer, quieter, a private garden. Crystals glowed among tall silver trees, their leaves shimmering faintly like stars. A stream of blue water ran through the room, its surface glowing in the dim light. And there she was. Princess Leora stood beside the stream, her back straight, her silver hair catching the glow of the crystals. She wore no heavy crown, no jewel-encrusted, robes only a flowing gown of pale violet silk. She looked less like a goddess and more like a woman, yet even more breathtaking. Marcus stopped at the edge of the garden. Guards remained outside, leaving them alone. Leora turned slowly, her violet eyes sharp yet uncertain. "You may approach," she said softly. Marcus stepped forward until he stood a few feet away from her. He bowed slightly. "Your Highness?" For a long moment neither spoke. The stream whispered between them. Finally, Leora broke the silence. "Do you know what you did?" Marcus lifted his head. "I spoke my mind." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "You broke a law older than our empire. No Zalari has ever dared to use that word in the presence of royalty, not even to each other." Marcus tilted his head. "Why? It's not an insult. Where I come from, it's a gift, a way to show respect, a way to honor someone." Leora's eyes flickered, as if the word honor unsettled her. "To us it is weakness, a chain of emotion that binds judgment. We are taught from birth to bury such words, such feelings. They are poison." "And yet," Marcus said carefully, "you didn't look poisoned when I said it. You looked surprised." Leora's breath caught, her hands clenched at her sides. For a moment, Marcus thought she might order his death on the spot, but instead she turned away, staring into the glowing stream. "No one has ever dared before," she whispered, her voice softer now. "Not my advisors, not my suitors, not even my own family. I have been raised to be untouchable, a symbol, not a woman." Marcus's chest tightened. He saw the loneliness in her words, hidden beneath layers of pride. "Where I come from," he said gently, "we see our leaders as people first. We believe strength isn't in hiding emotions, it's in carrying them, even when they're heavy." She turned back to him, her violet eyes searching his face. "And you believe that is strength? To feel? To speak such things without fear?" Marcus nodded. "Yes. It takes courage to speak truth. It takes more courage to hear it." The silence stretched again, but this time it wasn't heavy. It was fragile, delicate, like glass that might shatter with one wrong move. Leora studied him for a long time, then quietly she asked, "When you looked at me and said that word, did you mean it?" Marcus didn't hesitate. "Yes, completely." Her eyes widened slightly. Her lips parted as if to reply, but no words came. She turned away again, her silver hair flowing like a curtain between them. "You are reckless, human," she whispered. "But I find myself unable to hate you for it." Their meetings became a secret rhythm. Over the next few days, Leora requested Marcus's presence again and again, always in the garden, always away from the eyes of the court. To the nobles, he was still a reckless outsider who had insulted their princess. But behind closed doors, something else was happening. She asked him about Earth, about oceans and forests, about cities full of lights and skies full of birds. He told her of music, laughter, celebrations where people danced without reason other than joy. She listened with wide eyes, as if hearing a story from another universe. In return, she spoke of the empire, of the crushing rules, the endless rituals, the silence that weighed on her every hour of every day, of how no one ever dared to speak to her as if she were real. Marcus noticed the small changes, how her voice softened when she spoke to him, how her gaze lingered longer each time, how her hands no longer trembled when he stood close. But outside the garden, the empire roared louder, In the council chambers, nobles argued fiercely. Some demanded Marcus be executed to restore honor. Others whispered that perhaps the human's words had revealed a hidden flaw in their society. For the first time in generations, cracks formed in the perfect stone wall of Zalari tradition. One evening, Marcus was summoned again, not by Leora but by the High Council. The chamber was full of nobles, their jeweled robes glowing in the torchlight. The eldest counselor, Lord Veyron, glared down at him from a high seat. "You have polluted our princess with your words," Veyron said, his voice like iron. "You will answer for it. Do you repent?" Marcus stood tall. He thought of Leora's eyes, the way she had asked him if he meant it. He thought of the loneliness she had confessed. "No," he said firmly. "I don't repent. I told her the truth. On my world, truth is not a crime." The chamber erupted in shouts. Some nobles demanded his death, others called him dangerous. But Marcus noticed something else. Several remained silent, their eyes troubled, as if unsure. And in the shadows above, Princess Leora watched, her hands clenched, her heart racing. For the first time in her life, she felt torn between duty and something far more dangerous: the desire to protect one reckless, honest human. That night, as the palace slept, Leora stood alone in her garden, staring at the glowing stream. She whispered the forbidden word to herself, testing it on her tongue. Beautiful. The sound made her shiver, not with fear, but with a strange warmth. No one had ever dared before, but Marcus had. The halls of the Zalari palace had never been so tense. News of Marcus Hale's words spread faster than fire across dry grass. Courtiers whispered behind veils, guards muttered under their breath, and nobles sharpened daggers with words meant to cut invisible wounds. Marcus had stirred something forbidden, something dangerous: curiosity and defiance. Princess Leora felt it too. The once untouchable figure now found herself caught between her duty to the Empire and a strange, thrilling desire to understand this human who had dared what no one else would. Yet the court did not see curiosity. It saw insult, corruption, and weakness. The next morning, Marcus was summoned to the council hall, a towering chamber lined with silver banners and crystal pillars. The air was heavy with the scent of polished metal and incense. Nobles filled every seat, their expressions frozen in a mixture of rage and disbelief. At the center of the hall, Princess Leora sat upon her throne, her posture immaculate, her gaze sharp. The nobles had been relentless in their arguments, demanding Marcus be punished for dishonoring their princess. Lord Veyron, the eldest counselor, slammed his hand on the silver podium. "This human has broken every law of our empire. No word more dangerous has ever been spoken. You, princess, stand in danger because of his recklessness. What say you?" Leora rose slowly, her silver hair cascading down her shoulders. The hall went silent, as if the air itself waited for her words. "He spoke the truth," she said calmly, her voice ringing through the chamber. "And for the first time in my life, someone has seen me as I truly am. I will not condemn him for honesty." The hall erupted. Nobles shouted, arguing over the audacity of her statement. Some demanded her abdication. Others whispered about rebellion. Marcus remained standing, heart pounding, but he did not falter. "Your Highness," he said, bowing slightly, "I did not come to insult. I came to speak honestly and to understand your people. Nothing more." Leora nodded. Her gaze softened, briefly at him, though she quickly regained the composure expected of a princess. Outside the chambers, the Empire began to stir with unrest. Merchants whispered that the princess had been corrupted by a human. Soldiers questioned their allegiance. Even some loyal nobles began to doubt the infallibility of centuries of tradition. A rival faction, led by Lord Kalen, saw opportunity. They plotted in shadows, weaving lies and threats into the ears of lesser nobles and guards. Their goal: to remove Princess Leora from power before her fascination with the human undermined the empire entirely. Kalen's words were sharp and precise. If the empire is to survive, she must be reminded that emotion is weakness. And he must pay for daring to speak where no one else could. By the next week, tension had reached a breaking point. Small riots broke out in the outer palace districts, fueled by whispers of corruption and scandal. Leora's advisors pleaded with her to distance herself from Marcus, to show that the empire remained unshaken. But Leora refused. "I will not hide," she said, her violet eyes blazing. "I am who I am, and I will not forsake the human because of their courage." Marcus watched her from the garden as she spoke to him in secret. She seemed smaller, more human than the grand princess everyone else feared. He realized then that no army, no weapon, no political council could match the strength in her conviction. Yet the world outside their private garden was ruthless. Lord Kalen orchestrated an ambush of Marcus one evening as he left the palace under guard. Shadows slipped from the corners of dim streets, knives glinting in torchlight. Guards fell first, their bodies incapacitated before they could sound alarms. Marcus drew his sidearm, moving with the precision of a trained soldier. He fought fiercely, but the numbers pressed him back. Just as a blade was about to strike his chest, a silver blur intervened. Leora. She had taken up a small dagger, moving with surprising speed and determination. Together they pushed the attackers back, though several escaped into the darkness, vowing revenge. Breathless and shaken, Leora stared at Marcus. "Why would you come back here?" she demanded, her voice shaking. "Because I cannot leave you," Marcus replied simply. "And because someone must show them that honesty is not weakness." For the first time, Leora felt fear, not for herself but for the human who had dared to challenge her empire. The council, furious at the failure to capture Marcus, demanded an immediate trial. Marcus would have to defend his words, his actions, and his very presence in the empire. The nobles argued that if he were allowed to go unpunished, the empire would crumble from within. The trial was set in the grand chamber, a room designed to intimidate. Marcus walked in, unarmed, surrounded only by guards. The council seats loomed above him, crystal pillars reflecting the cold light of the room. Hundreds of eyes stared, not just at him, but at Leora. She sat behind the podium, her hands resting lightly on the silver surface. Her expression was calm, but her heart raced. She was challenging centuries of tradition by supporting a human. Lord Veyron began the proceedings. "Marcus Hale, you stand accused of insulting the princess, of undermining the empire, and of spreading." "Dangerous weakness, how do you plead?" Marcus stood tall. "I plead, and that honesty is not a crime. I plead that truth spoken with courage is strength, not weakness. I did not insult the princess, I honored her in the only way I know how." The nobles hissed. Some whispered that he was insane. Others leaned forward, listening. Some even looked, unsure, questioning the foundations of their traditions for the first time. Leora rose. Her voice rang across the chamber. "I support him. I will not allow fear of emotion to control my life, or the empire. If words spoken with respect are a crime, then I am guilty alongside him, and I choose to stand with truth." The chamber erupted in outrage. Shouts and accusations filled the room. Kalen banged his fist, demanding her abdication. Guards moved to restrain him, but Leora held up her hand. "Enough," she said. "The empire will not fall because a human dared to speak honestly. If it does, it will be because we cling to fear rather than courage." That night, the palace was a storm of tension. Marcus returned to his quarters exhausted. The political upheaval was worse than any battlefield he had faced. Yet he felt a strange pride. He had never seen a princess so determined, so alive, despite the weight of her crown. Leora, too, wandered the private garden alone. The glowing stream reflected her face, pale in the light. Her thoughts were turbulent. She had always been untouchable, feared, and disciplined. But Marcus had shown her a different way, a human way. She touched the water with her fingers, watching ripples distort her reflection. He is reckless. He is dangerous. But he is honest. And I cannot ignore him. For the first time, she felt a thrill of life that had been missing for decades. A spark that could either ignite greatness or destruction. Outside the palace, the empire murmured with unrest. Soldiers whispered in barracks. Merchants spoke in hushed tones. Even the counselors who had supported the trial were unsure. Marcus's words had planted a seed, the idea that courage and truth could be stronger than fear and tradition. And the ripples of that seed were only beginning. In the private garden, Leora spoke softly to Marcus, unseen by anyone else. "They will not forgive us," she said. "I know," Marcus replied. "But they will respect honesty, and perhaps one day, they will understand it." Her violet eyes met his, glowing faintly in the light of the crystals. "I hope you are right, human. I truly do." As they stood there side by side, the Empire's silence seemed to tremble. The first cracks of change had begun. Word of the human and the princess spread beyond the palace walls. Across the Zalari Empire, whispers carried the story of the fearless envoy who had dared to speak the forbidden word. Some laughed in disbelief, some trembled in fear, and some, quietly, wondered if perhaps Marcus's courage revealed a path the empire had long denied itself. For Marcus, the journey had only just begun. And for Leora, the weight of her crown had never felt heavier and never more alive. The conflict was far from over. But for the first time, both human and princess understood that truth, courage, and emotion were forces stronger than tradition, and more dangerous than any weapon. The day of the trial arrived like a storm. The grand chamber was filled beyond capacity, every seat occupied by nobles, counselors, and observers. Even the windows had been lined with Zalari citizens eager to witness the human who dared to challenge centuries of tradition. The air buzzed with tension, the silence broken only by murmurs of disbelief and the occasional shuffle of robes. Marcus Hale stood at the center of the chamber, flanked by guards. His posture was straight, his gaze steady. Behind him, Princess Leora sat elevated above the floor on her throne, her violet eyes fixed on him. Her presence gave him courage. Without her support, he might have faltered. Lord Veyron, the eldest and most respected counselor, raised his hand. Silence fell. "Captain Marcus Hale," he began, his voice cold and resonant, "you stand accused of violating the sacred laws of our empire, insulting Princess Leora, and spreading weakness among our people. How do you defend yourself?" Marcus took a deep breath. He could feel the weight of 1,000 eyes upon him. Some were filled with hatred, others with doubt. He remembered Leora's gaze earlier that morning, calm yet unwavering. He drew strength from her. "Your Highnesses," Marcus began, his voice clear, "I do not deny what I said. I called the princess beautiful. I do not regret it. In my world, truth is a gift, not a crime. Honesty is strength, not weakness. My words were not meant to insult or harm. They were meant to show respect." Gasps filled the chamber. A few nobles leaned forward, mouths open in shock. Others muttered among themselves. Lord Veyron slammed his gavel. "This is not a world of yours, human. The princess is our symbol, our law, our tradition. To speak such words is to poison the empire. Do you not see that your reckless audacity endangers us all?" Marcus nodded respectfully. "I understand your fear, but consider this. If your empire values truth, courage, and honesty, then these qualities are not weaknesses. They are the foundation of strength. To suppress them is to weaken yourself." A ripple of whispers moved through the chamber. Some nobles frowned in anger. Others appeared thoughtful. For the first time, doubt crept into their minds. Princess Leora rose to her feet. Her voice rang out with authority, though her hands trembled slightly. "Enough of this fear-mongering," she declared. "I have lived my life under the weight of silence, as every Zalari has been taught. I have never been allowed to hear words of honesty, kindness, or truth. Until Marcus spoke, I was bound by the chains of tradition, not by choice." A murmur spread through the chamber. Leora's declaration shocked everyone. "I support Marcus Hale," she continued. "He spoke truth. He has shown me that honesty and courage are not shameful, that they are the pillars upon which a great leader must stand." If speaking the truth is a crime, then I am guilty as well. The chamber erupted into chaos. Shouts and accusations filled the air. Some nobles demanded her abdication, others accused her of corruption. Even Lord Varen looked momentarily taken aback. Marcus remained calm. He had expected anger, he had expected threats, but he had not expected to see the power of one person's honesty ignite a spark in an entire empire. Lord Kalen, the leader of the rival faction, stepped forward, his eyes blazing. This human has corrupted the princess. He undermines our laws, our traditions, and our authority. If we allow him to go unpunished, the empire will crumble. Marcus met Kalen's gaze evenly. You fear change, he said. You fear what? You do not understand. But the truth is not weakness, it is courage. And courage is what keeps empires strong, not blind obedience. The chamber fell silent. Kalen's lips pressed into a thin line. Several nobles shifted uncomfortably. The words were simple, but they carried weight. Leora stepped closer to Marcus, placing her hand lightly on the podium. I will not allow fear to dictate our lives, she said firmly. We will not punish honesty. We will not punish courage, and we will not let tradition blind us to what is right. The trial continued for hours. Witnesses were called, advisors who had served the princess for decades, scholars who argued for tradition, and even soldiers who recounted the unrest in the districts caused by the scandal. Marcus listened carefully. He did not interrupt, but when it was his turn to respond, he spoke with clarity and purpose. I understand your traditions, he said. I respect them, but tradition should serve the people, not bind them in fear. Strength is not in silence. Strength is in truth, in courage, in honesty, and in the willingness to face consequences for one's actions. My words were simple, yes, but they carry power. They remind us that even a ruler is human, even a princess is human, and even an empire must change to survive. The nobles whispered among themselves. Some looked angry, but others were thoughtful. For the first time in centuries, doubt and reflection had entered the grand chamber. As the trial drew to its close, Marcus turned to Leora. Your Highness, he said quietly, you have shown more courage than I ever imagined. Supporting truth in a world built on fear is the hardest battle of all. She met his gaze, her violet eyes steady and unwavering. And you, human, have shown me a world I never knew existed. A world where words are powerful, where courage is honored, and where honesty is not punished. Together they faced the council, their presence united. The room seemed to shrink around them, the walls of tradition trembling. Finally, Lord Varen spoke again, his voice measured. Marcus Hale, you have spoken with courage and conviction. And Princess Leora, you have demonstrated strength beyond what we have seen in generations. The council will deliberate and a decision will be made. But know this, the seeds of change have been sown today. The chamber emptied slowly, nobles and citizens leaving with thoughts stirred, whispers of doubt, curiosity, and wonder following them like shadows. Outside the chamber, Marcus and Leora walked through the palace garden. The glow of the crystals, reflected in the stream, casting light on their faces. You could have remained silent, Marcus said. You could have ignored me. Leora shook her head. I could not. No one has ever spoken to me honestly before. No one has ever made me feel human. You reminded me of something I had forgotten. Marcus smiled. And what is that? She paused, looking at the stream, then back at him. That strength is not in hiding, but in standing for truth, even when it terrifies everyone around you. That night, the palace was alive with tension and anticipation. Nobles debated, soldiers patrolled, and the citizens of the empire whispered of what they had seen. For Marcus and Leora, it was a night of quiet reflection. They had faced anger, fear, and doubt, but they had also discovered the power of honesty and courage. Leora touched the water in the stream, watching the ripples distort her reflection. She whispered softly, "No one has ever dared before." And yet he did. Marcus's hand brushed hers, a simple gesture of reassurance. and together we will face whatever comes next. The empire was not yet safe. The rival faction had not given up. The nobles were still divided, but for the first time a path of change had opened, a path led by truth, courage, and a human who had dared to call a princess beautiful. The trial had ended, but the story was far from over. The palace was alive with whispers, tension, and unease. For days, the Zalari Empire had simmered on the edge of revolt. Lords and nobles debated, soldiers patrolled, and rumors of rebellion spread like wildfire through the districts. Marcus, Hale had become a symbol of both courage and danger, the human who dared what no one else could. Princess Leora stood on her balcony, gazing at the glowing city below. Her violet eyes reflected the lights of thousands of crystal towers. She could feel the weight of her choice pressing on her chest. Every word she had spoken in support of Marcus, every act of defiance had changed the empire forever. But not everyone would accept change willingly. Footsteps approached. Marcus came into view, his uniform slightly dusty from the morning's training drills, yet his expression was calm, almost unshakable. He stopped beside her without needing to speak. "They're restless," he said quietly. "The nobles, the soldiers, even some of your counselors. They fear what they don't understand." Leora nodded. "They fear courage. They fear honesty. But most of all, they fear change. And yet, I cannot turn back. I will not." Marcus looked at her, admiration in his eyes. "Then you will need to stand with them anyway, and I will stand with you." Her lips curved slightly. "You have already stood for me, human. Now the question is, will I stand for you?" The palace bells tolled. It was an alarm, a signal that the rival faction had chosen to act. Lord Kalen and his supporters had gathered soldiers outside the palace walls, preparing for an attack. In the throne room, the council convened urgently. Lords shouted, some calling for Marcus to be handed over, others demanding Leora flee. The palace guards, loyal to the princess, readied themselves for battle. The air was thick with fear, anger, and uncertainty, but Leora's voice rang out, steady and commanding. "We will not abandon truth. We will not abandon courage. If this human is guilty of anything, it is courage itself, and we will meet those who threaten us with the same bravery." The council fell silent. Even the most stubborn nobles were forced to acknowledge her conviction. Marcus stepped forward, his calm presence a contrast to the tension in the room. "Your Highness," he said, "we have faced trials with words. Now we must face trials with action. But know this: courage is not in avoiding danger. Courage is in meeting it and standing for what is right." Leora met his gaze, and for a moment, the weight of the empire faded. It was just the two of them, united in purpose, facing the storm together. The attack came at dusk. Shadows moved along the palace walls, soldiers emerging from the darkness with weapons drawn. The first clash erupted in the outer courtyards. Leora's guards met them head-on, shields clashing, blades glinting in the soft light of the palace lamps. Marcus fought with precise skill, his training as a Terran officer evident in every movement. He deflected strikes, disarmed attackers, and protected the princess when needed. But numbers were overwhelming. Just as a soldier lunged at Leora, with a curved blade, Marcus intercepted, taking the strike himself. Pain shot through his side, but he gritted his teeth and held the attacker back. Leora's eyes widened, fear and anger mixing. "You fool," she shouted. "Do not throw your life away for me." "I chose to," he replied, standing tall despite the wound. "And I choose to stand with you, always." The palace guards rallied, inspired by their princess and the human beside her. Together they pushed the attackers back, forcing them to retreat into the shadows. But the battle was not over. Lord Kalen had planned more than just a physical assault. He sought to shatter the princess's confidence, to make her abandon Marcus and her own beliefs. Inside the palace, Kalen confronted Leora directly, flanked by his most loyal soldiers. Princess, he sneered, you have been corrupted by a human. Your empire is at risk. Choose wisely, turn him away, or watch everything you love fall apart. Leora stood her ground. I will not turn him away, and if the empire falls, it will not be because of courage or honesty. It will be because of fear. Kaelin laughed. Brave words, but words alone will not save you. Marcus stepped forward, supporting Leora. No, he said firmly, but they will remind your people of what strength truly is. Strength is honesty, strength is courage, and strength is standing for what is right, even when the odds are against you. The chamber seemed to hold its breath. Kaelin's expression faltered. For the first time, he saw the unity and resolve between human and princess. He realized that fear and tradition could not break them. The final confrontation came in the throne room. Kaelin raised his weapon, preparing to strike, but Leora's voice echoed across the chamber. Stop, she shouted. This ends now. We will not allow fear to dictate our lives. You may have the numbers, but we have truth, courage, and the will to stand together. The room went silent. Soldiers hesitated. Even Kaelin faltered, unsure of his next move. Marcus raised his hand. It is not too late. Stand down. Choose honor over fear. One by one, the attacking soldiers lowered their weapons. Nobles who had supported Kaelin began to whisper, realizing the futility of rebellion against truth and courage. Kaelin's plan had failed. Leora approached him, her eyes blazing. Leave, or face the consequences of defying your empire. Kaelin hesitated, then fled with his remaining followers, leaving the palace and council shaken but victorious. The palace was quiet once more. The threat had passed, but the empire had changed forever. Citizens whispered of the bravery of the human and the strength of the princess who had dared to support him. Nobles who had opposed them began to reconsider their beliefs. Marcus stood beside Leora in the palace garden, the soft glow of the crystals reflecting in the stream. Both were bruised and tired, yet unbroken. You did it, Marcus said quietly. You led your people, faced danger, and stood for what is right. Leora looked at him, her violet eyes filled with gratitude and something deeper. No, she replied. You did it. You reminded me of what courage is. You reminded me of what it means to be human, to feel, to act, to stand for truth. He smiled, brushing a strand of silver hair from her face. Then we did it together. For the first time, Leora felt the weight of her crown balanced not by fear, but by understanding, by courage, and by the honesty she had found in a human. Days later, the council formally recognized Marcus's courage and the princess's wisdom. Their actions had prevented further rebellion, inspired loyalty, and planted the seeds of a new era in the Zalari Empire, one where honesty and courage were no longer punished, but celebrated. In a private moment, Leora approached Marcus. She touched his hand lightly, her violet eyes soft. You are brave, human, she said, her voice trembling slightly. And beautiful. Marcus felt warmth spread through him. It was not just the compliment, but the meaning behind it. The first true acknowledgement of his courage and heart, from someone who mattered more than any empire or law. And you, he said gently, are stronger than anyone I have ever met. More than beautiful. You are remarkable. They shared a quiet moment, standing together in the glowing garden, knowing that the empire would remember this day. Not for the battle, not for the rebellion, but for the courage of a human who dared to speak the truth and the princess who dared to listen. The Zalari Empire had been forever changed. One human's daring words had sparked a revolution of thought, courage, and honesty. The princess had discovered the power of emotion, and the human had shown the galaxy that even a single individual could make a difference. And together, Marcus Hale and Princess Leora proved that the greatest strength of all was not in fear, power, or tradition. It was in truth, courage, and the audacity to speak what no one else would. The stars outside the palace twinkled, silent witnesses, to a story that would be told for generations, the story of the human who called the alien princess beautiful and changed the fate of an empire forever.